I hear your rage, and I don't have children and literally have never lost a child nor had one injured to actually, really be in your shoes. But one thing that I can tell you about the redirection is because so often what we see happen is politicians play games. The reality is that if you are talking about a sanctuary city, then we're talking about city government. We're talking about local control, something that the Republicans used to espouse that they believed in. They used to believe in whoever lives in that city, you elect who is going to run that city. And that city, whether it's the police department, which is the police department and law enforcement that make the decisions about what they do. We don't pick the police chief for any given city. Not on the federal level. That comes from the city level. That comes from whoever the people of that city actually elect to represent them. I believe in local control. Same thing, I live in Texas too. And baby, I wish I didn't have to deal with Governor Greg Abbott, but local control dictates that he is the governor of our state, and therefore we have state reps, we have state senators, and we have a governor, and we have county elected officials and city elected officials. We are sitting in Washington, D.C. right now. We are on the federal level. So what I believe in is something that the Republicans used to scream, which is local control. So when we're having a conversation and a hearing about the human toll, the title specifically is the human toll of sanctuary policies, stories from victims and families, my deal is we aren't the ones that decide what cities do. So what they've decided to do is they've decided to play on your pain. And that is why I am frustrated. Because hear me when I say this. I have seen people, whether it was an American citizen or not, that killed your child or harmed your child, I believe it's wrong. To me, it wouldn't have made it any less painful. And I could be wrong again because I don't have any kids. But if for some reason it had been a U.S. citizen that ended up harming or killing your child, the pain would still be there. It would still hurt. So the reality is that what we need to do is make sure we are protecting everybody in this country. I don't wake up and somehow people look and see that there's a D somewhere around my head or something, and so therefore I am going to somehow be precluded from harm becoming me. When I go out to do policy work, and I've worked on the state level too, the policies that I was writing when I was on the state level are different from the federal level because we have different levels of control. The one thing that we do have control of, you may have recognized that the DHS Secretary, as we're talking about immigration, she had to come before this committee. I want to say maybe a day or two after she came before our committee because we have jurisdiction over her. We don't have jurisdiction over your mayors. We have jurisdiction over her. She lost her job. The DHS secretary is gone. Now, to be clear about this, the Republican president is the one that put her out of her job because she was failing. So the reason that my colleagues have brought these things up, and this isn't to say that the harm and the hurt that you are feeling, that you should not be feeling that. It is wrong. Again, even as a criminal defense attorney, I can't tell you how many times I was begging clients to enter pleas. In fact, it literally made me remember a case that I had with a guy who was a veteran. He had served this country. He ended up being put on some new medication, and he also ended up drinking with that medication. Now, the medication had a warning on the bottle. But he went out, he drove, and he killed someone's mother. That client told me he had no criminal history. He told me over and over and over, he said, just give me whatever they're gonna give me. They offered him the max, which was 20 years, and I could not in good conscience, knowing that a jury would not give him the max. The only reason we went to trial is because the prosecutor wanted to be so greedy. That jury did not give him 20. He was willing to take 15 years. I am here to tell you that it is never right to break any of our laws. So the reason that we have gone down the line and the reason that we brought Mr. Romanucci is because we actually have control over CBP and DHS. It's just, and ICE. It's just that these guys don't want to exacerbate, use that control. They sit there and they allow U.S. citizens and non-U.S. citizens to have their rights violated, and that is something within our purview. If I lived in one of your cities, in fact, I am in Dallas. Dallas has a Republican mayor. To be a sanctuary city doesn't necessarily mean that you provide sanctuary. It means that you're not going to do the federal government's job. That's what it means. They are local law enforcement. And what it means is that they are not going to sit there and do the job of federal agents. That is what a sanctuary city means. But to be clear, again, and I have more articles, the city of Houston was not, when you talk about someone being a sanctuary city, it is an official policy that they are following. It can't be that it's one person. It's the official policy of the city. Otherwise, it doesn't work if it's just one person. I will yield. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Sure. Yes, gentleman is recognized.
Thank God she won't be back next Congress, but I'd like
Just
Okay,
to answer Ms.
I probably broke, by the way, they're not laws. I probably broke all kinds of rules today, just so you know, and I don't care, you know?
When Ms. Crockett said she doesn't have children, so she doesn't know, I mean, we're not wired to process the type of tragedy that we're living. We're not. There are no words. I will tell you, it does feel different when an illegal immigrant kills your children than it does an American, because it was preventable. It feels different. Not that I know that because I have had an American kill a child, but when something's preventable and your life is ruined from something that's preventable, it does hit a little different than what I would imagine it would feel like just a regular casualty. Loss in itself is so difficult. There's no words. Loss is loss. It is very tragic. What we're dealing with when it's preventable, when these people have done something and they weren't asked to leave. If I were to go to Honduras, where the woman who killed our children is from, and I would kill 2 teenagers there, I'm not getting any rights from the Hondurans. They're not giving me rights. It's different. This is preventable. So I think it does hit a little different when our tragedy is preventable.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congressional oversight hearings often serve as the intersection between high-level federal policy and the deeply personal tragedies of American citizens. On April 16, 2026, the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Oversight convened a hearing titled "The Human Toll of Sanctuary Policies," featuring emotional testimony from families affected by crimes committed by undocumented immigrants. To understand the 2026 legal landscape, we must analyze the debate over federal jurisdiction, the definition of sanctuary cities, and the conflicting perspectives on preventable tragedy. A central theme of this hearing was the local control versus federal mandate debate. Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas framed the issue of sanctuary cities through the lens of traditional conservatism, local control. From an educational perspective, this illustrates the jurisdictional war, the argument that the federal government does not have the authority to pick local police chiefs or dictate how municipal law enforcement resources are utilized. In Crockett's view, a sanctuary city is not a haven for crime, but a municipality that has officially decided not to perform the federal government's job of immigration enforcement, prioritizing local public safety and community trust instead. The discourse then shifted to the preventability of harm. In a poignant moment, Representative Crockett suggested that the pain of losing a child would be the same regardless of whether the perpetrator was a U.S. citizen or an undocumented immigrant. This was directly refuted by Jen Heiling, an angel mom whose testimony provided the emotional core of the hearing. Heiling introduced the concept of the preventable casualty, the legal and moral argument that because an undocumented immigrant should not have been in the country, any crime they commit is a failure of federal enforcement that was entirely avoidable. This represents a profound shift in 2026 oversight discourse, moving beyond general crime statistics to the specific administrative failures that lead to preventable loss. A technical portion of the hearing involved administrative accountability and DHS oversight. Representative Crockett reminded the committee that while Congress has no jurisdiction over city mayors, it possesses direct oversight of the Department of Homeland Security, DHS. She cited the recent removal of the DHS Secretary by the Republican president as an example of executive accountability for failing to maintain border security. The educational link here is the scope of purview, the argument that House committees should focus on the agencies they fund, such as CBP, ICE, and DHS, rather than using local municipal policies as a redirection from federal enforcement shortcomings. The hearing also touched upon the official policy versus individual action distinction. Representative Crockett argued that for a city like Houston or Dallas to be considered a sanctuary, it must follow a codified, official city policy, rather than being characterized by the actions of a single individual. This reflects a 2026 focus on administrative law integrity. However, for victims like Jen Heiling, these legalistic definitions offer little comfort. The hearing exposed a fundamental gap between the legislative deference to local government and the public's demand for a unified national standard of safety and immigration enforcement. In summary, the April 2026 House Judiciary hearing reveals a nation grappling with the fractured responsibility of immigration. Whether it is debating the definition of local control or the psychological weight of preventable loss, every exchange is a lesson in how the federalist system handles modern crises. These are not merely partisan talking points, they are foundational questions about the safety of the citizenry and the limits of federal power. By understanding the link between municipal policy, DHS oversight, and victim advocacy, viewers gain a clearer view of the legal and moral standards that will define American immigration discourse for the next generation.